Dare I say, this tournament has been the most anticipated in recent history. What are you looking forward to?
Without question. I mean, it's just been such an unpredictable season, and I think that the volleyball world has seen some weird upsets, some interesting matches, but it's really the strength of volleyball in the country. There's so much more parity today than I've seen in years past. I'm excited to see the bracket and how it fleshes out.
So before we get to the bracket, here's how the tournament works. 64 teams have been invited. There are 16 national seeds that get to play first and second rounds at home, and then the top 4 seeds coming out of those first and second rounds will host regionals. Pittsburgh will host the semis and championship in late December. So the top 8 seeds, here we go. The number 1 seed, the Baylor Bears. It's a year of firsts for Baylor. Their first time as the number 1 seed, and their first time as number 1 in the nation.
Well, there's so much to talk about with this Baylor team, but they have proven to the volleyball world that they have arrived. And if you haven't had the chance to see Yaciana Presley play, do yourself a favor and take a look. She can single-handedly take over a match by herself.
It is their first time leading the pack heading into the tournament, and you can understand their jubilation. The Bears are the number 1 seeds. The number 2 seed right across the state, the Texas Longhorns, the 2012 champions. Only 3 losses this year, and they've spent a lot of weeks at number 1, too.
I tell you, there's no other team in the country with this much firepower at every single position. With the number 1 hitting percentage in the country, Texas can and will overwhelm you at the net.
So 2 Texas teams hosting first and second rounds. They're also 2 of the top 2 seeds from the same state. The Longhorns looking in, finding out that they're the number 2 seeds in the tournament. And it looks like the Longhorns mean business. The number 3 seed, the defending national champions, Stanford, on an 11-match win streak heading into the tournament.
Man, Stanford looks poised and ready to make another run for the title. They've been playing much of the season without their reigning player of the year, Catherine Plummer, but she is back, she is healthy, and watch out, she's ready to play.
Looking forward to later in the show, we'll talk to Stanford's head coach Kevin Hambley as they have just won their 3rd straight Pac-12 championship. The number 4 seed, this was a debatable decision. Wisconsin grabs the number 4 seed, the Big Ten champs.
You know, this might be one of the most complete and balanced teams in the country. Led by the play of All-American Dana Recchi, this is a dangerous, dangerous team that have worked their way through a brutal schedule in the Big Ten to win the conference.
We'll actually get to talk to Dana Recchi later in the show. So who's number 5? Nebraska! Nebraska, the champions 2 years ago. Stanford and Nebraska have split the last 4 championships.
You know, playing in arguably the toughest conference in the country, Nebraska is where they are today because of the leadership and play of their All-American middle, Lawrence Stivrins. One of the best in the country, and she's ready to go.
Pitt grabs the number 6 seed. It has been a year of firsts for the Panthers as well. They achieved the number 2 ranking in the country, the highest ranking an ACC team's ever had.
Pittsburgh Panthers have made a huge splash this year, sweeping Penn State early in the season, beating Utah, going undefeated in conference, winning the ACC, and playing some of the best volleyball of the year.
Minnesota beat Penn State last night, and tonight finds itself as the number 7 seed in the tournament.
And Minnesota's been kind of my sleeper team all year, battling through some injuries, running some different offenses without their starting setter, Kylie Miller. Well, she's back, and the offense is rolling. Watching Stephanie Samity play her best volleyball of the year.
Washington grabs the last of the top 8 seeds despite being upset by Washington State last night. Their wins over Stanford and Wisconsin twice put them in the top 8.
Washington played a tough non-conference schedule with those wins that you mentioned and battled through a tough Pac-12 conference to get the number 8 seed.
Well, the number 9 through 16 seeds are what kept the committee up late last night. This was a very difficult decision. Here's how it shakes out. Kentucky, Florida, Penn State. Penn State, of course, had a big win earlier this weekend over Wisconsin. That pushed them up to number 11. Hawaii, Texas A&M, BYU, Western Kentucky, and Purdue grabs that final 16 seed. So, without further delay, the bracket in the top left of your bracket. It is the Baylor Bears as the number 1 seed. Will open up play in Waco against Sacred Heart out of the NEC. Also in Waco, Stephen F. Austin, with only one loss this season, will be taking on the Trojans of USC and the Pac-12. Continuing on the left side, Purdue will be at home. The Boilermakers will be facing in their first round Wright State, who is making its first appearance in the NCAA tournament. Also in this section, Marquette, they were on the bubble for a top 16 seed. Marquette will open up play against the Dayton Flyers. Dayton winning their 13th A-10 title. So here's the 8 teams in this section of the draw, Salima.
Man, it's such an interesting side of the bracket. The things that stand up to me the most is USC, unseeded USC, dangerous with Khalil Lanier, one of the best outside hitters in the country. Take a look at this bracket as it unfolds.
So again, Baylor, if they get through first and second rounds, they would host. Kentucky, the number 9 seed, will be at home. The Wildcats, sharing the title with Florida in the SEC, will take on Southeast Missouri State. Northern Kentucky, also in this section of the draw, making its first appearance in the NCAA tournament against the Big Ten's Michigan Wolverines, who are 7-3 over their last 10 matches. Continuing down the left side, the Huskies, as that number 8 seed, will be at home in Seattle to take on Winthrop. Winthrop out of the Big South. Colorado State into the tournament, 29-1, 28 straight wins, will take on the SEC's South Carolina Gamecocks. The SEC got 6 teams in the tournament. So here's the 8 teams in this quadrant of the draw.
So many things stand out to me again, but it's Michigan, unseeded Michigan, playing some high-level volleyball right now. I think they're the team to watch and see if they can come through with some big wins in this portion of the bracket.
Let's continue to move down the left side of your bracket. Nebraska getting that number 5 seed. The Huskers will take on Ball State, who come into the tournament on a 9-match win streak. Northern Iowa, also in this section of the draw, the MVC regular season champions, will take on the SEC's Missouri Tigers, who always seem to play their best volleyball at tournament time. Hawaii gets to stay home, and Hawaii will be hosting in the first round Northern Colorado. Also in Hawaii, San Diego had a huge weekend, winning the West Coast Conference by beating BYU twice this year. Will face Washington State, who upset Washington just last night. So here are the 8 teams in this section, which is on the left side of your bracket.
And this is a tough portion of the bracket. The 2 unseeded teams that stand out, San Diego and Washington State, have to go at it in the first round. A tough match for each of those teams.
The final 8 teams on the left side of your bracket, Texas A&M will be at home. They begin play on Thursday against St. John's, who is the Cinderella story, having to win their tournament to get in, and they did just that. Oklahoma getting a bid out of the Big 12. The Sooners will be in action against Rice, who had the huge upset earlier this year against Texas. Wisconsin, the number 4 seed in this year's tournament, will open up play against Illinois State on an 8-match win streak. And UCLA out of the Pac-12 and a former NCAA champion, the Bruins will face Notre Dame out of the ACC, who missed the tournament last year, but the Fighting Irish have fought their way back in the field of 64. Here's your final 8 teams on the left side of the bracket down at the bottom.
I'm going to continue on with my unseeded dangerous teams, UCLA, Rice, all in a position to win or upset teams as they move forward. Keep an eye on this portion of the bracket for those teams.
So let's go all the way up to the top right-hand corner of your bracket. Stanford will be at home, of course, as the number 3 seed. The defending national champions will open up against Denver. Also in Palo Alto out of the SEC, the Georgia Bulldogs into the tournament to face Cal Poly, who beat Hawaii, Utah, and Pepperdine this season. Continuing the right side of your bracket, BYU was a top 4 seed last year. This year, BYU will still be at home and open up against New Mexico State, who's on a 19-match win streak. Utah was another one of those bubble teams for a top 16 seed, and the Utes will be facing in the first round Illinois, who was one of the final teams in the tournament.
Another brutal side of the bracket with the unseeded teams. Utah and Illinois, that's a match that stands out to me. This is going to be a fun one in the first round of the NCAA tournament.
We continue down the right side. Penn State had a win over Wisconsin, pushed them up to a number 11 seed. They will face Princeton out of the Ivy League in round number 1. First time since 2017. American University also in this section of the draw, a 17-match win streak. Their 18th NCAA tournament against Towson. Towson coming in representing the CAA. Pitt is the number 6 seed. And the Panthers, the number 2 ranked team in the country, will face Howard. 17 wins in Howard's last 18 matches. Cincinnati also traveling. And the Bearcats will face VCU. VCU 14-0 in the Atlantic 10 before falling to Dayton.
I'm looking at a potential rematch between Penn State and Pitt. They'll get their third shot of the year to play one another and see what happens if they both advance that far.
The rubber match, that's right. They face each other twice. Continuing down the right side of your bracket, Minnesota, who beat Penn State last night, will face Fairfield in the opening round. They finished top of the MAC this year. Iowa State getting a bid into the NCAA tournament out of the Big 12 will face Creighton, who was another one of those teams that was on the bubble for a top 16 seed. Florida did grab a top 16 seed, splitting the SEC title with Kentucky, the Gators number 10, and will open up against Alabama State, who won the SWAC as the number 5 seed. UCF, which had a huge win in the opening rounds last year, is back after their second straight AAC title to take on Florida State out of the ACC. A lot of Florida schools in this section.
A lot of Florida schools, and I'm looking at a potential matchup between Minnesota and Florida, 2 physical teams that could potentially be going at it down the line.
The final 8 teams in the tournament. We begin with Western Kentucky. Wow, 31-1, 27 straight match wins coming into the tournament. They will face Kennesaw State in round number 1. Samford University getting into the field as well this year. 12 straight match wins to face Louisville out of the ACC. Despite losing their best player, they regrouped and have made the tournament. The final 4 teams in the tournament, the Texas Longhorns, will be in Austin on Thursday to face Albany out of the American East. And also in Austin, UC Santa Barbara into the tournament this year to face Texas State.
I'm looking at Western Kentucky. They've been playing well. They're hot right now, and they have the ability to upset some teams down the line.